Hello.
Are we live?
We are live.
Yay!
Yes, we're live.
Hello.
I hope we're live.
We are back. Hi, Claire. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you. Very well. Another muggy day for our episode. That's
We
what
need
seem
to start watching the weather forecast when we plan these things.
But it adds to the drama of the event.
Yeah.
So
Us and
welcome
Storm Ellen.
everybody. Thank you for joining us. Claire and Lucinda here from Pummel and Need again, and this is episode 5 of our self-care live stream sessions. If you missed our last episode, it was with makeup and skincare expert Joyce Connor, and she talked really openly and frankly about how her industry has been affected by the lockdown and how her industry has actually come to a bit of a standstill, but how she's managed to adapt herself and her business to an online forum, so to speak. She does online skincare tutorials, and she's really managed to take the positive out of this kind of interesting time. So if you did miss that, that's on our YouTube channel, and you can check that out. And it's really worth a watch. So that's our last episode, episode 4. And this episode 5, we are going to be joined by Gareth Richardson, a professional actor and professional photographer. And as always, it's going to be in 3 sections, this live stream. So it'll be about an hour. We try to keep things under an hour. And we start off talking to our guest, Gareth. Then we will do a little massage demonstration. This week, we're going to focus on the upper legs, requested by our guest, Gareth. And then at the end, we'll have a little bit of time for questions that you may have for ourselves or Gareth. So that's just at the end. You can pop anything as we go along on the live feed, and we'll make sure we'll do our best to answer that. And you I'll pop this on now, but we always put a little PayPal, Pummel and Need, a little thing scrolling along. And that's just if you did fancy to make a donation. Obviously, no obligation at all. But what we do each week is we ask our guests to nominate a charity. And this week, Gareth has nominated Mind, which we'll hear a little bit more about later. But each week we split it equally between ourselves at P&K, Gareth and the charity. And Mind is an organisation that basically really strives to help everyone in need with mental issues, to help support, but also respect people going through mental problems. So it's a really important charity, and it's really worthwhile cause. So if you do have any spare pennies, that would be fantastic, and we'll make sure Mind gets those funds. So Gareth, we feel very lucky to have Gareth with us today. He is a extremely talented and versatile actor. He's been in numerous theatre productions, including Stephen Daldry's #1 UK tour of An Inspector Calls. He's worked in a variety of renowned venues such as the Young Vic and the Soho Theatre, and he also does voice work, screen work. He's done a lot of film and screen, and he also does some corporate work. So it'll be really interesting to hear his take on acting and how he's been affected during lockdown with the acting industry and that kind of world. But he not only is an actor, he's actually a professional photographer. So as a sideline to his acting, he's built up his own photography business, and he specializes in working with individuals to create bespoke headshots. And I don't know if any of you guys have seen our little posters where we have our headshots for Pummel and Need, but my headshot is actually by Gareth, and it's beautiful. So I can recommend him 100%. So we'll be talking to Gareth about his photography business and how that has also been impacted by lockdown and everything that's going on at the moment. But also we will look a little bit at how he's been just coping generally, talk to him about, you know, his family life. He's got 2 young children at home, so it's, you know, it's just a nice time to have a chat and just see how he's getting on. But before I bring Gareth in, because we're very excited to talk to Gareth, I will say hello to Claire. And how are you doing? How's everything going with you at the moment? I've just been gabbling on for about half an hour.
No, all is well. Yeah, it's quite muggy at the moment, but it's a substantial relief compared to the 36 degrees that we had last week. That's not really ideal when you're massaging with a visor and a mask, steaming up.
Yeah, goodness me, yeah. No, I did a few of those. Have you noticed any difference in terms of how work's going? I know when we first started, it was quite quiet, kind of building up, because obviously maybe people were a bit hesitant to come back for treatment. Have you noticed a difference this week? Are things starting to slowly improve?
Yeah, I think slowly but surely people are starting to feel a bit more confident. Partly, I guess, it's word of mouth of someone saying, hey, you know, I went for a treatment and it was really safe and there was plenty of like quite stringent hygiene procedures and everything seemed very clean and hygienic. In the same way, someone might say, you know, I went for a meal and actually the restaurant was lovely and it was nice to get out and, you know, everything was done properly. So I think a bit of confidence is building up. It's a tricky one because, you know, you want to do things properly and you want to make sure everyone feels safe, and you want to do things like slowly, not jumping straight back into it as it was before, because I know for me and for yourself it was quite hectic. We were both kind of 6-7 days a week running around the place, so easing yourself back into it is probably not the worst thing in the world, even if financially it's not ideal.
Exactly. Yeah.
But it's slowly but surely. I think you've probably had the same experience.
Yeah, and it does kind of. I was just going to say, actually, I don't know about you, but it's made me kind of think about. I don't know if you can call it a craft, but my craft more. So I'm kind of, even though I'm doing fewer clients and I'm working with fewer people, I feel like I'm more engaged in what I'm doing, and kind of I'm getting back to really understanding and concentrating on how I'm massaging and all that kind of stuff. It's kind of brought me more into focus, whereas when we were rushing around doing lots and lots of treatments, that maybe had slightly kind of dissipated a little bit. So for me, I'm quite enjoying looking, you know, working one-to-one with clients and really focusing on their problems and really just going back to kind of the roots of why we do it in the first place. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and it's quite interesting as well. I know that a lot of people have not only had like physical issues from working at home at a laptop, you know, not everyone has a great desk setup, so people are kind of crouched over at a table, or they're sitting on their couch or their bed or whatever, in terrible positions. Some people working, you know, 12, 14 hours on a laptop a day, which is awful. But also I think the anxiety levels have been quite high for a lot of people during the past 4 months. And I think, you know, a lot of people who've come for a massage have said, God, I didn't realize how much tension I was holding. I feel like, you know, a lot of people have just been holding their breath for 4 months, shoulders up, jaw clenched, you know, unsure about what's okay and what's, you know, coming next. So it's that, in a way, has been quite interesting just to see the other side of, you know, what's been going on. There's a lot of, I think, latent tension amongst people, even now, because we're still on tenterhooks for the next wave or for the next, you know, announcement. So I think people have been quite glad of massages when they have come in for them, I think.
And again, it highlights, I suppose, how much stress and tension actually impacts the body. So it's not just about, you know, physical activity, if you're or the way you're sitting, or the way you're holding yourself, actually stress and tension has a massive impact on the body and can actually cause so many problems. So I think lockdown certainly for me, and as you said, your clients, and certainly my clients that I've been seeing now since the restrictions are slightly lifted, we're kind of seeing stress and tension that's related to the mind, and how how anxiety and worry can cause stress and tension in the body, and I think it's highlighted more than ever at the moment how that is affecting us all and can affect us. I would never underestimate how much that can affect you physically. So I think that's been highlighted more, I think, as a result of all of this as well. So
absolutely, yeah.
some interesting things. Anyway, enough of all that. Right, we're going to get on to the exciting part now. We're very exciting ourselves, but not as exciting as our special guests today. So I'm going to bring Gareth in. Just bear with me. I'll just add him on to our little chat.
Hi, how you doing? You
Hi.
right?
I'll say goodbye.
Hey,
See you in a while, Gareth.
Bye, Claire.
Bye, Liz.
Bye. All right. Oh, she's gone. How are you, Gareth?
Yeah, very good. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for joining us. It'd be really interesting to hear sort of your thoughts and
absolute pleasure.
how you've been doing. So how are you doing? How have you found sort of the last few months?
It's been different, I guess. It's been in waves, hasn't it? Like some days you just feel absolutely brilliant and the sun's shining. We've been lucky with the weather, so we've obviously been able to be outside an awful lot, which I think's helped. If the second wave comes and we're in downpour or freezing cold outside and not able to get outside as much, I think that will have a huge effect on people. But who knows what's to come?
Yeah, exactly. We have been lucky with the weather, I have to admit. It will be a very different story if this all happens in winter and we're all kind of shut inside. I think that might feel a bit more oppressive, even though sometimes it has felt quite oppressive recently. But how have you been? So tell us a bit, right, let's start from the beginning. Tell us a bit about sort of how you got into acting and why you've got such a passion for it and why it became your career, so to speak.
So I mean, as most kids do, you play role play, don't you? My 4-year-old is mad for it right now. Like, can't get enough of it. And me and my sister would write little sketches, little plays, and we'd be performing them for my parents. My dad would film them, and that was just something I think we did just as very young children. And at about the age of maybe 5 or 6, my sister's 2 years old, and I was about 5 or 6, and I wanted to do everything she did, which included even going to a session of brownies once, which very but never again. No. So she ended up going to a youth theatre that a friend of hers had already been to once before, and I wanted to go too because my sister was going. And as soon as I started, I just absolutely loved it and fell in love with it. And it obviously took that role play that we've been doing and put it into a structure and sort of more of an understanding of what we've been doing at home. Which, I mean, children, you see kids are watching like Paw Patrol and they're playing the characters of Paw Patrol, or as my little one at the moment, I'm just like 24/7 Mary Poppins. Starts very early. Sometimes I go in at 6 a.m. and I don't even realize which character I am, and she gets very frustrated if I'm not doing the correct accent for Bert. And I'm like, 6 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah. So were you like that when you were young?
That was me. I think she's a chip off the old block.
Yeah.
So, I guess it started from that, and then with the youth theatre, I did multiple shows whilst we lived in Kent, and then when I moved up to Northumberland when I was 9, I then joined the junior youth theatre, which was like the sort of middle schools age range, and kids from all the area would come together for this junior youth theatre to put on shows like Bugsy Malone and others. And then when I moved to high school, that's when things clicked up another gear, because I joined the sort of the senior youth theatre, but it was also ran by the drama teachers and English teachers of the high school. And some of the workshops that we did with them and the people they had come in to work with us in drama, just in GCSE and A levels, we were doing exercises which I then later would visit at drama school, and some of my friends at drama school had never done some of that stuff before, and it showed the training that I'd already received without even realizing the quality of it at high school. So
you were quite nurtured. You were like really nurtured at that age.
Definitely. And with that, I think it sort of takes it to I don't know, you sort of exploring what acting is, what theatre is, what a character is, what a story is. And we're told stories from as soon as we're born, you know what I mean? It's something that we all do. Even if you're not an actor, you're telling stories over a pint on the weekend, or, you know, I mean, wherever you are, you're telling a story. And it's an extremely sort of interesting thing to look into of what makes up a good story, what makes a great story, what characters are interesting, and
And do you, so obviously you act, but do you write then as well? Do you find that for your imagination you write your own stories?
So like I've always dabbled with writing, but it's sort of a bit of a sort of imposter syndrome sort of feeling to it, of like, I'm a trained actor but I'm not a trained writer, and I've got friends who are professional writers, and that sort of feeling of like they know stuff that I don't know. But then over the last 2 years I've been writing an awful lot more and sort of taking it a lot more seriously, and I've got a couple of pilots that I'm working on, some comedy shows, and then some short films as well. So it's been actually something which, because when you're working as an actor, you're not working constantly through the year as an actor. And so it's so hard to find the job that you're going to do when you're not acting. And then actually to then that sort of have that release of creativity. You're used to being creative, exploring characters, exploring stories. And for me, the writing has actually been a real sort of godsend for like being able to sort of explore that creative imagination and sort of put it on paper. And even if it doesn't go anywhere, having that outlet has actually been, I've noticed the difference.
And have you found that during lockdown as well, have you found yourself writing more and using it as a kind of as a form of sort of self-care and for you a sort of outlet?
To be honest, at the start, I was thinking, oh, this is great. We're going to have some time to sort of focus on the writing. But then, actually, it was like my imagination was, my whole head was just taken up with COVID and what was going on and the uncertainty of it. And so I couldn't actually think of anything to write about. It was, and also, like, what is the world that I'm writing about going to be like? Unless you're thinking of sci-fi or something like that, like what is the normality that we're going to be representing on stage or on screen going to be? So I found it quite hard to get my head around how I could write something, because even the things that I'd already started to work on, how will they be actually able to be sort of taken forward? Because it might be that they won't.
It's I think that's really actually an interesting point that you've touched on, because I think a lot of people have found that you know, this idea that during lockdown is giving us all this time to be creative or do things that we don't normally do, but we've been thrown into this kind of weird scenario that we feel like almost frozen, because we just don't know how it's going to work out. Like, we don't know which way it's going to go, and I've been the same. Like, people have sort of said to me, oh, you could be doing this, you could be doing that, because, you know, we as Pamela Need and as therapists have not been working for a long time. But it's like, where do you go? Because you almost feel like you don't know where to go, because you're in such a kind of strange reality.
That and you lose your purpose, kind of, I think that as well, like at the start, like you'd see different programs popping up on YouTube, you'd see people making short films, you'd see people doing play readings online, and there was part of me sort of desperate to do some of that, but at the same time, like, it's those people that I was seeing doing that were actually were younger, don't have a family, young family to look after, and it's a very different world. And in lockdown, and looking after 2 young children, obviously along with my wife Dawn as well, and it's non-stop, and so there isn't that sort of space to have that outlet as well, or I didn't find it.
It's a tough. So have you been, how old are your children? Have you been having to homeschool? Are you been having to?
Luckily we've got a 4-year-old who's about to start school in a couple of weeks, and a nearly 11-month-old. So in that regard, we were very lucky we didn't have to homeschool. Now the 11-month-old is a lot more physical. He's sitting up, he's crawling around and stuff. So actually in lockdown, he was a lot more sort of stationary, which sort of probably made it sort of was good and bad at the same time, because obviously you had to carry him around a lot more. He couldn't sit up on his own, whereas now he can, so you can put him down and there's a bit more space. But and the 4-year-old, obviously she's used to going to preschool a couple of days a week, and so it was about sort of, it was really nice to have that time. And I think as an actor, I feel very lucky in my day-to-day life anyway, because I get to share the childcare with my wife, who's also an actor. So we sort of do it 50-50 roughly. I mean, it's obviously different with a newborn. She's obviously carrying a lot of the weight, but with lockdown, obviously there was no work to go to, so it really sort of gave you that sort of time to be with the family and to explore new things together, which was lovely. Especially with the 4-year-old going to school soon. It was quite a sort of a privilege to have her back just with us for a couple of months, whereas obviously if she'd stayed on at preschool and then gone straight on to school, you just lose. You've got like the nights and you've got the weekend.
So it's that you've had that sort of special sort of time to bond and kind of all be together as a family. But it must have been pretty tough as well.
And I mean, it's very full on. Obviously, you've got the different needs of an 11-month-old and a 4-year-old who, I mean, she's phenomenal. The 4-year-old, she's the great big sister, loves him to pieces and is so helpful. But she's obviously got her needs and wants to be doing stuff. She's used to being active. She's used to being creative all the time. And so you've got that going on, but you've also got a sleeping baby. So, and when you could only go out for an hour at a time, when it first locked down, then obviously that makes it tricky, because she's obviously full of beans. She's got all this energy she needs to burn off. And you've then got a baby who's sleeping and you're like, please, don't wake him up. It's very full on at times, but on the whole, it was great.
Oh, good. Well, that's a nice thing to hear, because I think there's real mixed reactions, isn't there, about lockdown? How it's been. Some people have loved it, found it really sort of freeing and given them time to do things, and other people have really struggled. And I imagine with you, it's probably been quite mixed, because yes, you've had that amazing time with your family and you've had that bonding time, which you wouldn't have ordinarily got. But for both yourself and Dawn as actors, I imagine lockdown has been very worrying, because the industry itself has been getting a lot of, I suppose, traction online about how it's really struggling, especially the theatre world. And I don't know how you feel about it. Is it something that
I mean, sort of... it's one of those things that to be an actor, like, you have to be in it for more than money. I mean, it's not about the money, because if it was about the money, there wouldn't be so many actors, because the majority of actors aren't earning enough money to actually live. They're having to do other jobs, so I absolutely missed that creative outlet. I missed that interaction with others. I missed that audience and the sort of exploration of stories with others. And I think that it's very hard to get that from anywhere else. It's I've heard an older actor years ago talking about it as like it's a drug that you sort of need to sort of, you need that experience, you need that outlet. And it is a very worrying time. I mean, they're saying that 70% of theatres will run out of money by the end of the year if we don't go back to full capacity. And the thing is, they've also said that we're not going to be able to talk about getting a full capacity back into a theatre until at least November. So that doesn't leave long, and it's obviously, that's a huge amount of theatres that could close. Well, and already we've got people that are have been made redundant. Theatres have had to close. So many people I know that work in the West End, like backstage and front of house, have been made redundant. Some of them are holding on for dear life, hoping that we're going to go back to opening the doors and they'll be able to find a new job in the theatre. But other people have also, like I know a carpenter from one of the West End theatres, and he's actually decided, you know what, after years and years of working in the West End, he's going to retrain, he's going to diversify and find a new career, which is heartbreaking, really, because he's dedicated so much of his career to theatre.
Well, it's just so unexpected. If anyone, no one could have ever predicted that, you know, we'd be having this global pandemic where these things are closing. You just, it's just so unpredictable. But it's also so worrying because you're getting all these mixed messages from the government about help, because wasn't there that big grant that was going to be offered to the theatres, but they haven't done anything with it yet. I was speaking to another friend who's also an actor, and she was saying that obviously they've given this big grant, but it's not being used. So, you know, it's like,
and you've also got
so worrying.
Like majority of people that work in theatre are freelancers, and there's some people are able to get the help from the government, but also a huge portion of people, not obviously just in theatre, but also in photography and other areas of different businesses as well. And actually, I must say, like, if anyone is wanting to support theatre, there's so many innovative outdoor performances happening right now. Please go and support. If you feel safe and comfortable enough to go along to some of these, please go and support, because it will help the future of theatre. And also, if you don't feel comfortable to sort of go to the theatre right now, buy theatre vouchers, theatre tokens, support the theatre by doing that, so that they've got the money then in the future when we can open the doors to actually put on shows. And there's also Theatre Artist Fund, which for the people that can't get support from the government, the Theatre Artists Fund is a fund set up which you can donate to, and that will help freelancers who can't get any financial help from the government. So
yeah, that's really good to know. I think we'll pop that on our comments, so
that'd be great. Yeah,
look into that.
It's also like, it's worrying for say dancers. Dancers have a very short window for a career anyway, because of injuries and the lifespan of a career of a dancer. And if they don't go into choreography or teaching, then actually performing is very limited. It's a bit like the guys that were training for the Olympics, and this could be in their last year as a dancer, or like how.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking, because that's the thing. I don't think people quite appreciate that. You know, if you're not within this industry, the acting industry, you just see the people on TV, or you don't necessarily appreciate all the, as you said, all the people behind the scenes as well, but also the dancers, the people that have as you said, a limited time to achieve their goals that they've worked for years. You know, they've trained for years and years and years. Yeah, exactly. And then you're you know, you have to retire like an athlete. You retire at a certain age, and to you know, a few months in some industries might be nothing, but for this industry, makes such an impact, and it can affect everything going forward. So it's really good to highlight this, because unless you're kind of from that world, I don't think people necessarily understand all the effort, because there's so much behind the scenes work that people don't see. They just see the performance, or they just see, you know.
And I mean, it's also one of those things that like some actors do voiceovers, film, theatre, corporate. Others just do theatre. You might be a musical theatre performer. You might not do TV. You might not do voiceovers. So certain windows are narrow. And also, we had it as well with the financial collapse a few years ago, where actors who were used to doing the sort of bigger jobs were having to sort of take jobs which before they didn't have to take, but because the work wasn't there, they had to find work, which then obviously filters down, and that has a huge effect going forward as well. So it'd be interesting to see. Obviously everyone's having to sort of diversify, but it's given a lot of time for reflection as well, and being an actor is extremely hard mentally. Spotlight and Equity have been doing a lot recently in all drama schools with mental health to try and help, because you're constantly going up for jobs. Your hope is there, the dream is there, and then you might not get it. You might just keep getting the door closed, no, or you might not be getting in the room for the audition, and someone you know is. And there's a lot to sort of that you struggle with at times, and it will be interesting with this reflection how that affects the actors and performers going forward. Will there be a dropout? Will people say, you know what, actually this time being away from it might give them a new lease of life in a different career, or it might actually cement, no, this is exactly what I'm meant to be doing. Which for me, I think I was maybe 5 or 6 when I decided to become an actor, and people will be saying, oh, like, what do you want to do when you're older? A fireman? And I'll be like, no, I'm going to be an actor. I'm going to go to drama school. And I knew exactly what path I wanted, but because you've had that mindset all that time, and I think a lot of actors have had that, and that commitment that it takes to sort of grow as an actor, a bit like a footballer or an athlete, you've got to put in that time and effort early on. And it'll be interesting to see when people have taken their foot off the pedal and had that reflection for the first time, perhaps, is this the right path for me? So there could be some pluses to come from it. And obviously there have been online as well, with people being creative and making their own stuff.
Yeah, it's certainly a time to reevaluate, isn't it? What you know, me myself, I've had moments where I'm like, what am I doing? What career? Because I think when work is taken from you, it feels like a little bit of your identity is taken away from you, and then you start to reevaluate. Is that the identity that I want? Is that the career path that I want? And all the rest. So it's definitely an interesting crossroads, I think, for a lot of people. I think there'll be a lot of changes and a lot of shifts, because people start to really sort of think about what they truly want from life, whether it is to pursue a career that they're passionate about, or whether it is to be more family engaged, or whether it could be that it's not anything to do with career, and then it's more to focus on family, or more to focus on, you know, moving somewhere new, because I know a lot of people are moving. I've heard a lot of people are moving out of London, for instance, because what are you going to say?
I was probably going to say what you say. Because you're aware of your environment more, aren't you? Like when you're just going there, especially in London, like going there to sleep, eat, get up, you go to work, you go back. You might not actually spend much time at your house, but when we've been in lockdown, you've been more aware of where you live. I mean, people have been doing DIY left, right, and centre, doing up their gardens, doing up their house, buying things, in order to sort of make their houses, their homes, more pleasurable to be in. You know what I mean? And sometimes actually it just don't work. You're not having to think about that as much because it doesn't matter. And I guess if you don't live near a park, and you might have had to walk miles to get to a park or a green space, perhaps in lockdown, that would have been very hard on people.
Yeah, definitely. No, I think, as you said, when you're in a rhythm, when you're doing something, you know, like a job that's very, you know, going certain times to places and things like that, I think it's very easy to ignore other aspects of your life because you're tired with work, or you're kind of, you know, you're preoccupied. But when you've had that time where you're just in that space that you're in, you do certainly start to think about things, and whether that, you think about the bigger picture, I should maybe say. And talking about pictures, I like my little photography. How is that going for you? Because obviously that is another creative world that you're in professionally, and that is kind of your sideline, you would maybe say, to your acting. While you're not acting, how is that been going? And
yeah, I mean, it's starting to sort of pick up now. There's some interest, and I've done a couple of shoots recently, and it's one of those things that obviously with the performers, a lot of people aren't earning money, or aren't earning that much money. So there's the desire to sort of refresh those headshots, to be able to get yourself out there, like, this is me. Obviously, for a certain period of time, that the barbers weren't open, so the hairdressers weren't open, so people, especially mine, until yesterday, was a huge mob. So like, people aren't ready to have their headshots taken, but now you can start to see, and other headshot photographers I know are starting to sort of get people through the doors. Obviously, like, I love working with natural light, and shoot a lot outdoors. So for me, doing a headshot session outdoors is normal, and my preferred way of doing it, because you're more relaxed. You're not, like, a lot of people aren't used to, most people aren't Kate Moss getting their photos taken every day. And so being sat in a studio on a stool, it can feel very much sort of an out of body experience. And there's a lot of pressure on the headshot being perfect, because you want it to change your career, or you want it to get you in the door with a new casting director, or you want to be seen in a different light. And for me, shooting outdoors, you've got different environments, you've got nature, you've got the sun obviously as your light source, but it means that people feel more relaxed because they're in this sort of natural environment. And so going forward, obviously, in the restrictions, that isn't too much of a problem at the moment. But I do know a lot of photographers, wedding photographers, are having to diversify. Obviously, the amount of people that can come to a wedding is limited. A lot of weddings have been cancelled already, and a lot of weddings are still being cancelled. A friend of mine who's supposed to be getting married next month has had to postpone his till January. And they've photographers are diversifying with doing live streams over Zoom, in order to be able to get the friends and family that can't be at the ceremony to actually see it. Which is an exciting, I mean, that's the way the world has changed over the years, hasn't it? Things have happened, and someone's come up with an idea, and perhaps that'll be the new package that goes forward many years in the future, where, do you want a video, do you want photos, do you want a live stream?
And do you yourself, obviously you do photography as a business, but do you use it in a kind of outlet for yourself as well? Is it something that you find therapeutic?
I find it extremely therapeutic, and it's similar to what I was saying about the writing and that focus, especially with headshots. You're focusing on one person and having that interaction and that getting to know that person. The slight change in thought is similar to screen acting, where that slight change in thought will tell a complete different story. The slight tilt of the head, a different background, different amount of light coming in, and there is that creative play. And for me, it does give me that sort of a satisfaction, which I sort of, my life requires. I need that to sort of fill up again. And then you've also got the editing side of it as well, with when you process the photo. And so there is that amongst it, but also with the family. Obviously, I think photography has always been seen an important thing in life. You know, I mean, it's documented monumental moments in history. And but during lockdown, I noticed. I mean, I don't know if you're aware, people were doing doorstep portraits. So you could have your family portrait during lockdown on a doorstep or over the fence.
Oh wow! No, I didn't know that.
And
that's quite cool.
It is quite nice. It captures that moment of what you look like, where you lived during this weird time. And but then I think also people were, obviously you weren't able to see friends and family as much. So especially me with a very small baby, they're changing so much all the time. And my family live up in Northumberland, so I was very aware of, I need to take photos, I need to take videos, I need to send them up. And so I think it's not just me, you could see it everywhere. People were starting to sort of think about how to document the time.
Yeah, so maybe going back to, which I think we've seen a lot with a few things recently, going back to maybe more, I suppose, traditional methods of, you know, the old-fashioned photograph, just to kind of remember things rather than everything being, you know, so, I don't know, just doing like a WhatsApp, a video call or whatever, but actually taking a picture and capturing that moment in an artistic way to kind of appreciate this moment in history. Because let's be honest, like, this is going to go down in history, obviously, as a horrific time, but also a time that we got through and we all held together. And you know, it's nice to think of us looking back in a few years' time at those kind of photographs that really capture that, rather than just everything being online and digital, and, you know, almost go back to those traditional methods.
And I think with a digital camera, you can and your phone, you look through your phone album of your photos, and there's so many multiple shots, there's so many photos that you can't even remember what that was. And I think there's possibly the change in lockdown. There's still going to be hundreds of photos which are like the ones I've just said, but I also think there'll be ones which are more specific, where it's like, I want to capture that, or I need to, like, I let my 4-year-old cut my hair quite early on in lockdown. She gave me Mohican and shaved all my back. My dad doesn't have FaceTime or anything, and he lives alone, and so I had to describe to him over the phone what she'd done to my hair. And like everyone else, I was FaceTiming or we were Zooming, and so you sort of, to be able to send that photo, because he doesn't have an iPhone, he refuses to have a mobile phone, and so there was no way of that stuff. So I had to send him photos, which was really nice, because how often do we print photos? And it was nice to see the photos in hard print and send those up, and they're things that you see on people's walls and see. It's very different. Like, where do you put your photos if they're digital?
It's so true. I went home actually once restrictions were lifted a bit, and my mum was going through some old photographs, and there's something really special about just having a photograph in your hand rather than just looking at it on a phone. It just feels more real. I don't know, there's something very special about it, so I agree.
And you're not evaluating it against 5 other shots the same. I think now with digital, obviously, you can take as many photos as you want. Like even headshots. When I first graduated and was getting headshots, you'd get 1 roll of film or 2 rolls of film, and that was it. Whereas now you'll get 300 shots on a contact sheet, and it's so hard to sift through. And it's the same with our phones. Like, we'll take 12 of the same shot. We'll maybe send 1, but we'll keep all the others. Whereas seeing that hard copy, that one is the only one you've got, and it has sort of a weight to it.
Yeah. Exactly.
And it doesn't matter. Like the old photos of me as a kid, and there's ones where we're like eyes closed or pulling silly faces. Whereas now you hear, no, put your tongue away, open your eyes. You know what I mean? People are very precious of that. They're really it's endearing to look back at a photo and see my sister pulling these crazy faces that she went through a period of doing. And
yeah, exactly. It's more real, isn't it? It's catching those real moments rather than photoshopping or doing it so it's all perfect and it's all like beautifully posed and everything. But I'm sorry, I'm aware of the time because I would love to carry on chatting forever, but I'm aware that we need to go on to the massage section. But finally, I just wanted to ask you quickly about why you picked Mind as your charity. I think you've touched on it briefly already about, what everyone's going through at the moment. But if you could just say maybe a few words about
Mind's a charity. I've done some, I organised some comedy gigs for a few years back to support as well, because it's such an amazing charity, and I mean, mental health affects everyone, and I think over the past few months everyone has had good days, they've had bad days, and I think will have been more aware perhaps of their own mental health, be it a good mental health or a not so good mental health that they experience, and what triggers them, what makes them feel like, oh man, I feel great today, and what has affected them, be it like, I realize I haven't been out of the house today, and when you go out the house you notice that difference. And a recent study that I saw said that depressive symptoms are being experienced by 50% more. It's up by 50%, which is just horrendous, but I think we can probably see why. And it's just really important when you or someone else that is dealing with a mental health issue, that you're able to get the access to the right information, and that's at mind.org.uk. And I mean, finance, death, housing, all those things have an impact on anxiety, stress, and we're all living that right now. So that's why it's Mind.
Mind. No, very, very relevant at the moment. I think it's a really important thing to highlight. I think a lot of people are going through anxiety that they never even realized existed in themselves. So and mental issues. So brilliant. So the Pummel and Need little PayPal is there. So if anyone can donate a few pennies, we'll make sure Mind gets some of that. And thank you so much, Gareth, for chatting.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's been really interesting. If you, I think we had this up earlier, but I'll just pop it up again for some. If people want to check out Gareth's photography, they can go on to his website there. And as I said, I endorse it 100%. It's beautiful shots. So, and you do family photography and wedding photography as well, don't you? Yeah. So, it's not just headshots, but there's a range of photography there, and it's beautiful photography. And it's been really, really great to talk to you. Thank you. Too, yeah. And we're now going to move on to the massage section.
Lovely.
Which we have picked the upper legs because you sometimes get a bit of tension in the upper legs. Is that right, Gareth?
That's right. Being 6'3", you have to squat a bit.
So we're gonna I'm gonna pop you backstage. We'll bring you back at the end just in case there's any questions. But Claire's going to lead the massage section, and so we'll pop you backstage for a bit.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Okay. Right, so add Claire. Bear with me, people. And we'll remove Claire. Hello, Claire.
Hello, that was really interesting. That was great.
Yeah, fantastic. Very lots of relevant topics that are going on at the moment.
Absolutely.
Right.
All right, so let's do some massage.
I'll just unmute myself.
Lovely. Okay, so thanks everyone for staying tuned with us, and we're going to move on to a bit of self-care for the upper legs. So Lucinda will demonstrate. As always, everything that we're showing you today is user-friendly. You don't need any equipment or any oil. And we do have our full YouTube videos available, so you can have a look there for anything that you might miss out on today. So we're going to start with a few nice deep breaths. And we're going to move into a standing quadriceps stretch. So while standing, hold on to a countertop or a chair, something to assist you with your balance if you have something. And then bend your knee by grasping your ankle with one hand. And you can use your hand to give a bit more traction. So you want to bring your foot almost up to your bottom. So you get a nice stretch down the front of the quad, and hold this for about 30 seconds. And remember to keep breathing nice and slowly. You should feel a bit of opening down through the front of the hip as well. And then come back to a standing position. And we'll do that on the other side. So again, bend your knee and grasp your ankle with one hand. Don't worry if you wobble or you fall over a bit. That's totally normal. Hold on to a wall if you don't have a chair or a table to hold on to. And again, take a few nice deep breaths as you're doing it, right down into the belly. And maintain this for about 30 seconds. And then return to a standing position. So we're a little bit short in time today. Normally we suggest with all of the stretches to do them for about two or three reps and hold them for at least 30 seconds, longer if you can, which gives the muscle a chance to lengthen out and get used to the stretching sensation. So we'll now move into the seated hamstring stretch. So if you just pop onto the edge of your chair and straighten one leg out, take a nice deep breath as you do so and flex the foot of the straightened leg. So you should be sitting up straight at this point. So sitting up straight, you want to hinge over from the hips. Try not to curl your back. So the idea is you don't have to go very far, just far enough that you will feel a little bit more of a stretch down through the back of the leg. And then you can keep your hands on your hips and use your arms to reach down and increase the stretch. Again, being mindful to keep your back straight and the movement is coming from the hip. And also keep your breathing nice and steady and deep. Lovely. And then we'll move to the other leg. So you want to, as you can see Lucinda doing, straighten the leg out. You're sitting on the edge of your chair. Take a nice deep breath and flex the foot up so you get a stretch right through from the heel up to the hip. And then keeping your hands on your hips, use your arms to reach down the leg as you hinge forward. Lovely. And it's nice to think about maintaining a steady gaze, probably a couple of inches in front of the foot so you're not straining the neck or bending the neck down, putting pressure on that delicate area. Lovely. And take a nice deep breath in, and as you breathe out, come back up to a seated position. So again, with all of these, do them 2 or 3 times, and you can return to any of these massage demonstrations on our YouTube page, on our channel, which has a working from home section. Okay, so we'll now do a little bit of massage. So we'll start with the IT band, which runs from the knee joint all the way up the hip. It's made up of fibrous tissue and has a tendency to become really tight, especially if you've been sitting a lot or if you've been running or cycling a lot. So we want to try and release this. So as you can see, Lucinda is sitting with her legs, her thigh is parallel to the floor. So take one hand on top of the other and start at the side of the leg just above the knee. And you're using a raking movement with the fingers to pull up and across the IT band. You're working all the way up the IT band until you get to the hip joint. You can put quite a bit of pressure on here. Often people use a foam roller to target the IT band, which is, anyone who's done it will testify, it's pretty painful. So this should be moderately uncomfortable, but not awful. So again, do this 2 or 3 times, starting from the knee all the way upwards. And then to increase the intensity, you can use a fist position. So you're using the pressure of the knuckles to rake up through the side of the leg. And again, do this 2 or 3 times. It's good to do this slowly just so that you can clock in with your own body and feel where any areas might be a little bit sticky or especially tight. And if you find those tight areas, don't shy away from going a little bit deeper or resting there for a bit longer. Okay, and once you've done that 2 or 3 times, just take the palm of your hand and you want to rub quite vigorously. So almost like you're giving yourself a nice exfoliation over your trousers. And this is just to get some blood circulating through the area so that you can flush out any toxins or any anything that you've managed to break down with your massage. You always want to work upwards towards the heart with massage as well, so you're working in line with the blood flow. Okay, lovely. And we'll do this on the other side as well. So as you can see, Lucinda's going to demonstrate. Again, you're using that raking movement with the fingers, pulling up across the IT band from the knee all the way up to the hip. And you're doing this 2 or 3 times. The IT band is the iliotibial band. And as I said, it's an area that becomes really tight if you are in a flexed position for a long time. So this is something, you know, if you're bored on a Zoom call or stuck at your desk for a long period and not able to get away, this is something you can do just sitting down. And it's a really short and easy way to get things moving. Okay, and once you've done that, again, take the palm of your hand and rub quite vigorously all the way up from the knee towards the hip. Fabulous, as they say in the theatre. So we'll now move on to the quads. So for the quadricep, what we want to do is initially warm up the muscle. So you're gliding the hands from the knee all the way up the thigh into the hip. So you're using alternate hands. Again, as always, be as vigorous or as gentle as suits you. Some people can be quite tender in the quads, especially if you've been overdoing the HIIT classes during lockdown. And if you want to increase the pressure, you can get the knuckles in, go a little bit deeper. This is a really nice way to get things moving in the quads. I like to do this halfway through a workout when I'm taking taking a break. So moving on from this, we'll do a little bit of effleurage, so clasp the hands together, and from just above the knee you want to squeeze and hold the muscle and then move on up to the next part of the muscle. So you're essentially trying to almost pull the muscle up and away from the bone. I hope no one squeamish is listening. You're trying to really, you know, disperse any fibrous areas that might have built up along the thigh. You can modify this by doing a bit of a rolling action, which Lucinda is demonstrating beautifully. And then we're just going to work into the inside of the legs. So you take one hand and you're basically essentially squeezing along the inside of the thigh. So you've got your adductors, which run from the knee up into the groin, which again can become quite tight and can actually be, can cause a bit of misalignment in the knee joint. So it's quite important to keep these parts of the legs loose as well. And then we'll take the forearm and we'll use the forearm to work up the leg towards the hip. And then take your elbow and the same thing, you're working from the knee all the way up to the hip. And if you find an area that's tight, you can press your elbow in a little bit deeper. I can't promise it'll feel nice, but it'll definitely do some good. You don't want to bruise yourself, you just want to feel like something's happening. There's a fine line between hitting your edge and causing damage. Okay, and then just finish with a few nice raking movements up the thigh. Lovely, and then we'll do the same routine on the other side. So again, we're going to glide alternate hands up the front of the thigh from the knee into the hip. And then we'll increase the pressure by changing over to the knuckles. Lovely. And then we'll take the hands clasped together, and from just above the knee, we're squeezing, holding, and moving upwards. Lovely. And once you've done this 2 or 3 times, we'll take one hand and you're working up the inside of the leg. So again, we're working through the adductors to try and keep this area loose as well. You'll find if you do any sort of lunges or side lunges, that if this area is tight, you'll definitely feel it down into the knee. So yeah, and it's a difficult area to stretch properly, so it's quite good to do a little bit of massage to loosen it up. And then we'll come back to the front of the thigh, into the quadricep, and use your elbow to glide up the leg, or the forearm rather. You think I'd know my body parts at this point. So we're using the forearm, and then we're using the elbow to create a little bit more pressure. Okay, great. So we're just going to finish off with a nice stretch for the hamstring, the dreaded hamstrings. So for the back of the legs, what we'll do is we'll stand up, and you are bending your leg and you're propping it up on a chair. So you can see where Lucinda is. She's sort of lunging forward. So she's got her leg, her thigh parallel to the floor. Then wrap both hands around the leg and use your fingertips to press into sections of the hamstrings, working from just above the knee, up the leg towards the hip, and then holding each section for a couple of seconds. And as always, if you find a part that's a little bit sticky, you can hold in for a little bit longer, give a little squeeze. And once you've done this, we're going to do the same action, but this time use the fingertips to apply a sort of a pulling motion. So you're pulling the fingers upwards into the muscle. And then as you do so, slowly try and straighten the leg. So what this does is it creates a sort of a false inhibition within the muscle. So if there's an area that's particularly tight, you're allowing the rest of the muscle to lengthen out. So again, you work up the leg as you do this. You might find that the further up you go, the harder it becomes to straighten the leg, unless you're a gymnast or a very flexible person. Lovely. And then, as always, be mindful of your back when you're doing any of these stretches, and also be mindful of your breath. It's easy to hold your breath when you get to a painful area, but the more you can inhale and exhale, the better. So we'll move on to the second leg. Wrap both hands around the leg, and then use your fingertips to press into the hamstring, working from the knee to the hip. And once you've done that 2 or 3 times, then we'll do the same action, but this time we're doing this pulling action. So you're digging the hands or the fingertips in, pulling upwards, and then trying to stretch the leg out as far as you can. None of us are symmetrical, so it's totally normal for one leg to be different to the other. That's fine. We want to move towards symmetry, but in all reality, none of us ever will, probably. Okay, lovely. Thank you very much, Lucinda. So we'll finish with a couple of nice deep breaths just to round off the section. So a nice deep breath in through the nose, right down into the belly, and exhale through the mouth. And again, take a nice deep breath in through your nose. You can close your eyes if you like. And exhale through the mouth. And if all you've had today is 10 minutes to breathe and stretch, that's better than nothing, isn't it? Okay, thank you very much. I hope you feel nice and relaxed. And as I said, everything's up on our YouTube channel. We've got all of the body parts, well, many of the body parts up there. So do feel free to have a look. Thanks, Lucinda.
Thank you, Claire. That was great. I feel very loose in my upper legs. I'm just going to
Cool.
bring Gareth back on quickly, just to round up the session. I hope
No, very
Gareth
useful.
found that useful. Did you? Did that all make,
Yeah, it was very
all
clear.
make
Thank you very
sense,
much.
Gareth? And no questions about
No,
any
just
of the
on the
techniques or
raking
anything?
up the side of the leg. How hard are you pressing?
I think it's always you want to feel like you're getting a bit of movement through the muscle, so you're not just working on the skin superficially, you're actually going into the muscle itself. So you might see, you might see a little bit of redness afterwards, which is totally normal. This is just where you're getting the blood flowing, but you don't want to feel like you're bruising yourself, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's such an individual thing. Everyone's different, and I think you'll come to recognize, like anything, when it's effective and when you're just sort of having a little rub.
Yeah, you'll feel it. It's a very tender area, the IT band. So it's kind of, you want, as Claire said, you want to feel it, but not so it's really painful, because then you're kind of you're counteracting the benefits because if it's really painful, then you start tensing up. So you've just got to be a bit mindful of not going too strong, but strong enough to kind of get deep into the area.
Thank you.
It's a fine line. So did we have any questions?
Let
Claire,
me have a look. So one question that someone had was, Gareth, do you know of any support services other than, you mentioned the Theatre Artists Fund, do you know of any support services for people in the arts at the moment that they can access, even in terms of mental health or general networking?
I know Spotlight do a lot with mental health at the moment. They've been really pushing mental health. So Spotlight would be a great start, and also Equity as well. It's been a real push over the last year or so to really sort of bring mental health to the forefront of everyone's minds in the entertainment industry, because there are so many different stresses as there are with other careers as well.
Absolutely. We'll put that on our feed then. That's great that they are, creating awareness and offering some support. I think it's a stressful time for everyone, but it's good if there's a support service that is specific to your own industry, I guess, because there are very specific anxieties in every area. Cool. Yeah. Amazing.
Brilliant. Oh, well, I think that's probably, we're a bit over time, so we probably should wrap it up. But
actors, you can't shut them up.
I know, but it was just too interesting. But thank you so much for joining us, Gareth. It's been brilliant. And if anyone wants to ask any questions, you can email us directly at Pummel and Need, or you can and we can pass it on to Gareth, or Gareth's details are all sort of flying across the screen. You can get in contact with Gareth either about his acting or his photography. And we will also make sure that after this, we'll pop this episode on YouTube. So if you didn't have time to watch it all now, you can go and check it out at a later date. But thank you very much. I hope everyone has a good day, and it's been really insightful. And that's it. It's over. The live stream is done for another episode. Yes, we need just to be like, ta-da. But yeah, thank you so much. And also, and finally, I'll just say as well, thank you so much if you have donated anything to Mind, a really important charity, as we've been talking a lot about mental health, which is so relevant at the moment. So thank you so much to anyone who has donated, and we will make sure they get the funds. So thank you, and adios.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thanks. Take care. Bye.
Bye.